Okay, we'll go ahead and get started, and I am recording this. So welcome everybody. Thank you for joining us this afternoon for our presentation. Trying to do two things at once here, sorry. On how to apply for a waiver. Are you seeing my screen? Okay, great. Now, okay. This is part of our Family Care Enhancement Project, or the FCEP at Munroe-Meyer. The Family Care Enhancement Project is a group of parents who have children with disabilities or special needs. And we've had specialized training to provide that parent-to-parent support and to help families get connected to different services, such as early intervention. We help navigate medical and education systems, as well as get connected to community resources. We do have parent resource coordinators who are embedded in primary care clinics to help those families meet the social determinants of health, which are those non-medical needs that can impact health outcomes. We are a statewide project. We have parent resource coordinators all throughout the state. So no matter where you are, you should have a coordinator close to you. Just a couple housekeeping items. I am recording this webinar, and this recording will be put on the Munroe-Meyer YouTube page. The link is right there. So after it's edited, we'll put it up there. And there are past webinars already on there. If there's something you're looking for in particular, it's probably up there. As far as questions during this webinar, if you could submit them either through the question and answer function or through the chat, and we will get those asked and answered. And then also, if you could please complete the survey at the end of the session, we would really appreciate it. It's just very quick, like 3-question survey to see if this presentation was helpful, if there's anything else that we could be doing that you guys would like to see. And today's presenters are Brianne and Joyful from the Department of Health and Human Services. We appreciate Joyful joining us again today after last night's presentation. And my name is Jennifer Hansen, and I am a parent resource coordinator through the FCEP, the Family Care Enhancement Project, and that is my email address right there. If you have any questions after the presentation, or if you want any additional information, any additional materials, feel free to reach out to me and I will help you with that. And with that, I will hand it over to Joyful.
Right, hello. I will work on getting our PowerPoint pulled up. In the meantime, kind of introduce myself. I am a program specialist with the Division of Developmental Disabilities. Also have Brianne with me here today, and I'll let her introduce herself as well.
Good afternoon, Brianne Barris, and I'm the program manager for the eligibility and enrollment team that does waiver determinations here for DHHS.
And I assume you guys have also seen the presenter view. I am not sure why it's showing the presenter view instead of just the slideshow. Let me see if I can get that changed. Are you guys just seeing the slideshow now? Perfect. All right. Well, we are going to talk today about the home and community-based waivers and how to apply for them. So again, we are the Division of Developmental Disabilities, and we oversee all the home and community-based waivers in Nebraska. So we determine eligibility, we create the person-centered plans, we pay the service providers, and we monitor those services that are being provided. Today, we're going to specifically talk about just in general what the waivers are, what's available, what it looks like to be eligible. We have different eligibility requirements for each of our 5 waivers. And then where do you apply? How do you apply? So starting with our very basic information on the waivers, the purpose of all of our waivers is to help people live in the community. So the term waiver really means that a person is waiving their right to live in a more institutional setting. It also means that Medicaid is waiving some requirements for how they pay. So all of our waivers are Medicaid waivers, which means you have to have Medicaid to receive these services. Medicaid is primarily a medical insurance program. As such, it pays for medical type things. So it pays for things like prescriptions, emergency rooms, dental, any of those medical needs a person has. As such, it also pays for people to live in nursing facilities or in hospitals or medical-based settings. So being on a waiver allows this medical money to be spent in the community instead, so that people can live in their homes and wherever they choose in the community and still receive the support they need. Waiver services should really wrap around natural supports. They are not intended to meet all needs a person has, but they are there to meet the needs they can and to help those people be as independent as possible. So examples of services is teaching people to do things, maybe learning how to use a washing machine, learning how to use the bus system, learning how to prepare meals. It might also be help with some of those household tasks that a person is unable to do because of their disabilities. All of our waivers do have a respite element. So if they are living with an unpaid caregiver, respite can come in and provide some services to let that caregiver have a little bit of a break. We also do have home and vehicle modification and assistive technology on all of our waivers. So there are 5 waivers in Nebraska. 2 of them are based on a nursing facility level of care, which means that the person's disability would qualify them to live in a nursing facility. This is our aged and disabled waiver and our traumatic brain injury waiver. The aged and disabled waiver, you're either age 65 and over, which is the aged piece, or you have a disability. The disability is based on Social Security's definition of a disability. Traumatic brain injury, same disability definition. You do also have to have that diagnosis of a traumatic brain injury. Then we have 3 developmental disabilities waivers. For all of these, you have to have a developmental disability, and we'll get into what that means. But we have a comprehensive waiver, an adult day waiver, and a family support waiver. The family support waiver is brand new. We are serving people on all 3 of these waivers currently. So waiver eligibility. Brianna, do you want to take it here, or do you want me to keep going?
Absolutely, I can. Thanks, Joyful. So when it comes to eligibility for the waivers, we do have some pretty specific information we have to have first to qualify for the waiver. So we have to be a U.S. citizen, a resident of Nebraska. As Joyful mentioned, you do have to be eligible for and be receiving Nebraska Medicaid, because that's going to be what's paying for the waiver. For each particular waiver, there's a little bit of difference in what the level of care is, and I'll talk more about that a little bit. But you do have to meet the level of care for that particular waiver and have a need for waiver services. So we ask people first to apply for and accept Medicaid, and then use any other funding sources within the state to meet their needs. And when those are unmet, then we start working with the waiver to figure out how we can best help people in their home. So when it comes, next slide, please. So when it comes to Medicaid, it is important to kind of talk a little bit about the disability piece of it, because in order for utilization of the waiver, we do require the disability criteria to be met. It can either be met the Social Security Administration. If a person hasn't applied for Social Security yet, we do have a state review team that uses the same criteria to make sure a person will meet that disability. So a person can have supplemental Social Security income, or SSI, or Social Security Disability Insurance, which is the SSDI. We do have to have that application for that with the disability determination in order to use the waivers. So that disability has to be determined as a part of the utilization. So we'll talk a little bit about the 80 eligibility requirements. So for the first part of this is you have to either be the age, which is over the age of 65, or disabled, and that's that Social Security criteria I was just talking about. And that would be required for people who are 0 to 64 years that don't meet that age criteria. With the aged and disabled waiver, we are looking at nursing facility level of care. There is a site there for what regulation you can look at for that, but that really is based on the level of care that you would need to be in a nursing facility. So what we're looking at when we're determining that, we're looking at your activities of daily living. We've got risk factors, medical treatment, cognition factors. And when my team comes out to meet with you, they'll do an assessment to help us determine what level you have for care on that spectrum. So similar to the aged and disabled waiver, we're going to look at the traumatic brain injury waiver. And those eligibility requirements, you do have to be over 18 to use this waiver, 18 or older. We do have to have that disability determination, and then you have to have the diagnosis of a brain injury. Now with this particular one, it does have to be a non-degenerative or non-congenital insult to the brain, possibly leading to permanent or temporary impairment, and it has to have an associated diminished or altered state of consciousness. So there is a little bit of criteria specific to that brain injury, and we do request documentation of that to make sure that that piece is met. And the traumatic brain injury also follows the nursing facility level of care. So when we get into the DD eligibility requirements, this has been an area where some clarification has been needed for families and stakeholders. When we're looking at the DD waiver, we are looking at the comprehensive waiver, the day waiver, and the family support waiver. So all three of those waivers are going to be considered DD waivers. So this is going to be the eligibility requirements for that. You do have to have that developmental disability that's defined in our statutes 83-1205. That would be the diagnosis prior to the age of 22 and is expected to continue indefinitely. The disability does have to result in substantial functional limitations in each of the following areas for conceptual, social, and practical. And there's some information there to define what each of those would be. We do also have to meet the level of care for this particular waiver. For all three of these would be the intermediate care facility for individuals with intellectual disabilities. So we're looking at the ICF level of care, which you'll often hear that called. So
we will. Oh, sorry, I keep having to go back between unmute and the arrows and the opposite sides of the screen. So talking about how to apply for the waivers, applications on our website. We do have a PDF or paper application, and we do have that in 6 different languages now. So if you're helping someone who needs it in a different language, we do have that available in a multitude of languages. If it's filled out in another language, we can get it translated when it comes back to us. For the developmental disabilities waivers, we also do have an online application. It is still currently through Access Nebraska. I believe that's hopefully changing to iServe sometime in the fall or winter. The developmental disabilities is the only one that has an online application at this time. Once we move into iServe, that will be for all of the waivers. So the application is going to include a release of information. You are absolutely welcome to send in information with your application. If you're sending us a paper application, you have doctor's records, school records to send with it. That will help the process move a little faster because we'll already have everything in our hands. But we can reach out to professionals, those doctors, the schools, to request all the information. We never want the gathering of information to keep somebody from applying. Also, anybody can help a person fill out an application. So you can absolutely help people you are working with to fill out either the online or the paper application. We just do need the person who is legally responsible to sign that. So if you're filling it out online, there's a couple places to find it. If you're on our homepage, you will see under Director Green's picture, the blue button is going to take you to Access Nebraska to apply for the developmental disabilities waivers. Underneath, we have a link to the PDF version, and the link on our homepage will open the English version. That application is going to have check boxes on the top of it, so you can apply for either the aged and disabled, the traumatic brain injury, or the developmental disabilities. When you click the developmental disabilities checkbox, that will be for all 3 of the developmental disabilities waivers. So that does include the family support waiver. PDFs are also available in both the participant family section and the resources section. So there is a variety of places you can find the application on our website. On that eligibility page, at the very top, we have a box with the applications in all the languages. So you can go there and find the variety of applications. We also do have information on our eligibility page about how to apply for Medicaid, and some links that will help you with that. And then finally, on our resources page, we did stick the application PDFs at the very top of that page as well to make them easily accessible to people, as well as in the sections below.
Yes, so if you're going to be submitting that application, you can submit it online for the DD waiver. If you're doing it for the paper ones, you do have some options. You can bring it by a DHHS office. You can email it to us, or you can mail it or fax. So we have some options for you. However you want to send that to us, any way that you want to get it to us, we'll process it for you. We do receive those applications and then process them as quickly as possible to have somebody assigned to work that for you. Yep. And then one of the most important things through the process is just making sure that there is a legal representative. If there is a legal representative, we do have to have them participate in, answering questions, providing information, participating in assessments and things like that. So we do ask that they help out with those pieces. So I think we might get into just a little bit more about the eligibility determinations for these waivers. So the first one we're going to talk about is the aged and disabled waiver. When we receive those applications, we'll verify that they have Medicaid. We look to see if they're 65 or older. If they are, we process it for an assessor to go out and do a level of care. If they are under 65, we verify that disability. If they don't have it, we would send it on to our state review team to review for the disability determination. Again, oftentimes we'll see that determination is already made through Social Security. If that's the case, then we are able to process it through to do level of care right away. For the traumatic brain injury waiver, we're looking for that TBI diagnosis to start the process there. We do contact you to verify the information that's been submitted, and then my team will come out and do an in-person interview for the level of care. We use a tool called the NRI, which I think I talk a little bit more about on the next slide. It's a standardized and validated assessment that's recognized worldwide. We use it to determine what people's needs, strengths, preferences, really looking at those activities of daily living, any behavioral needs, and just figuring out what people's needs are. And then that helps us determine if they meet that nursing facility level of care. So those would be used to help us with the medical conditions, treatments, risk factors, cognition, activities of daily living. So we're really looking at those pieces. The NRI will specifically assess on that. So when it does come to the nursing facility level of care, there is a slight difference between when we're working with people who are under 18 or over 18. So if the child is birth to 47 months, we do have to have one defined medical condition, and those are all in the Nebraska regulations. If somebody is 48 months to 17 years, so just under 18 or over 4 really, they can meet in one of 3 ways. They would either have a medical condition and a treatment need, limitations in 6 of those activities of daily living, or limitations in the activity of daily living, and then 2 other considerations. So that NRI helps us walk through those pieces, and then we have a clinical team that might need to look at different medical conditions or paperwork that would go with those. Now, when we're looking at people who are over 18, we look specifically at the activities of daily living, risk factors, and cognition. So with the DD waivers, what we'll be looking for and doing with that is we receive an application. We send out a letter to let you know that it was received. We might call to verify some information if we need some additional. We will assign it out to one of my teammates, and they will start looking for supporting documents to identify the diagnosis, any limitations. They'll have a conversation with you with our developmental index to determine if there's any activities of daily living needs, things like that. When we receive those documents, we determine eligibility, and then you would receive a letter in the mail stating whether you are eligible or not. And again, the level of care for this DD eligibility is going to be that intermediate care facility. Many of us might be familiar with like Beatrice State Developmental Center. That's the intermediate care facility. So there are some helpful documents when we're doing developmental disability determinations. If you have these available when the application is submitted, it does allow my team to process them more quickly. So if you have any medical records, that disability before the age of 22, any medical records that would give that information, if there's any assessments from a licensed psychologist, and then the MDT reports are very helpful for my team in determining that as well. So any of those documents that you might have when you're submitting an application, go ahead and send them along. Those are very helpful. So when we're looking at the level of care for developmental disability, this is going to be specific to, the self-care, what their expressive language is, learning, mobility, capacity for independent living. So when we talked earlier about the statute and what the required pieces were, we're looking at functional level for people to determine if they meet the functional needs for the statute requirements. I did allude to this a little bit, but we do send a notice of decision. So once a determination is made, we would send a notice to the family or the person to let them know if they were eligible. All people who receive a notice from us are able to submit an appeal if they disagree with the decision. So the information for a fair hearing would be sent with that. And if somebody is found ineligible, we do send some additional information to explain why that might have been, so that if there is additional information that can be reviewed, more than welcome to reapply. So that would be kind of about the notice of decision. And I think that's the end of our PowerPoint. We do have some information here for you for contacting us. If you want some general information from us, you're welcome to email us at the developmental disabilities email. And if you have some specific eligibility questions or anything like that, feel free to reach out to us at the HCBS eligibility mailbox. That is kind of a combined mailbox of our waiver application mailboxes. So that'll be where things are gonna go for all waiver applications, inquiries, and everything in between.
Thank you. We have had a couple of questions come in. So I noticed the email address for submitting applications changed. If we submitted previously to the old email address, were they still submitted or should we resubmit?
Yeah, that's a great question. If you submitted to one of the email addresses that's on the application, the DD eligibility mailbox or the AD waiver app mailbox, all of that is being sent directly to the waiver app mailbox that you saw reflected today. So we do have that and should be processing it.
Okay. When someone is interested in the Katie Beckett program, how is their level of care assessed?
That is a great question. I will have to pull up my Katie Beckett information, Joyful, unless you know off the top of your head.
I don't know off the top of my head. I will say the one misconception with Katie Beckett is that a lot of times it's referred to as a waiver. It is not a waiver. Katie Beckett is really just an eligibility type for Medicaid. So it allows a child who has high medical needs to receive Medicaid without their parental income counting. But I don't know the requirements. It is through the Division of Medicaid. And we might have more information now that she's pulled up.
Yeah, and we've got kind of a fact sheet about it. We might have even a place on the website that has more information about Katie Beckett that we can share.
Yeah, we do have the fact sheet within our resources tab, but I think there's a whole Katie Beckett page that Medicaid maintains as well.
Yeah. I'll put the address for that info sheet in the chat. That's a good one, a good place to start. And then if you have some additional information, it gives the website that you can go to for it, and should have some contact information for the Katie Beckett program, so you can reach out to us.
Okay, and we have had two similar questions. So one is the disability eligibility for the Developmental Disabilities Registry, the same measure as the Medicaid SSI disability determination? And kind of along those same lines, can you describe the difference between the disability determination and the level of care determination and why each one is needed?
So I'll take the first part. The disability determination is just saying you have a disability, not a specific developmental disability. So those are two different criterias. The developmental disability is those criterias of having the diagnosis and the limitations in 3 areas that you find in state statute. The disability, as far as Social Security is concerned, is just a full medical disability. And
I think that covers it.
Okay. As far as the level of care versus the developmental disability, I think like 95% of people who meet the limitations in the developmental disability definition are also going to meet those limitations that we review in the developmental index.
Okay. So would you say that the disability determination is for that Medicaid eligibility and then the level of care is for the developmental disabilities? Waiver, is that?
I think they play together a little bit, right? Because you have to qualify for Medicaid in order to have the waiver. And the disability determination is part of a part of the Medicaid qualification. So I guess, yes, you could put it that way.
Okay, and does your child have to have Medicaid to apply for the waivers?
No, you have to have Medicaid in order to receive the waiver. So if a person is applying for eligibility for one of the developmental disability waivers, you don't have to have Medicaid at the time of application. if you were offered a waiver spot, you would have to have Medicaid in order to use the waiver or accept the waiver.
So a couple pieces on that. At 19 years of age, parental income no longer counts against someone for Medicaid. So if a child applies and they are kept off of Medicaid because of parental income, at 19, they should apply again. Additionally, if we make an offer to a child who does not have Medicaid because of parental income, once they accept that waiver offer, then they will also receive Medicaid, not based on parental income. So that's really when that state review team can come in and look at the disability if need be.
Okay. Summer, does
So I
that
see in the
answer
chat, and yes,
question?
if you were
Yeah.
denied Medicaid, I would still recommend applying for the waiver.
Okay. Regarding Medicaid eligibility, do we need to have parents apply for Medicaid for both A&D and DD waivers before completing the waiver application, or can we complete both simultaneously and submit together?
So with the aged and disabled waiver, there's no waiting list for that right now. So in order to use the aged and disabled waiver, we do have to have Medicaid in place. So oftentimes families will request Medicaid, and at the time of that request, indicate that they are also interested in the aged and disabled waiver. So that will allow Medicaid to know that this person wants this waiver, and they let us know that they are referring to us. With the aged and disabled waiver, oftentimes, especially for children, we find that we do have to go through the SRT process, because if you're not actively receiving those disability benefits through SSI and have the disability determined, we do have to go through the state review team process for the aged and disabled waiver. I hope that helps answer the question. And I would say, if you're putting in an application and you want to apply for both waivers, go ahead and submit that application to us, and my team will help walk you through that process. So feel free to submit that application to the mailbox, or however you want to send it to us. And we will help you walk through that process if you have not already applied for Medicaid.
Okay, what types of documentation do you need or want from the medical doctor?
From the medical doctor, we would want to see for the developmental disabilities, we would need to see the disability indicated as a part of that paperwork. As far as the aged and disabled waiver, if there is a medical condition that specifically is qualifying you for the waiver, we would want to see that paperwork. And my team will help you walk through, if you're not sure which paperwork to submit, my team can help walk through that with you during the application process.
Okay, along the same lines of submitting materials, what if your documentation is old, such as the MDT was done 5 to 8 years ago? Would you still want that submitted?
For the MDT material, we do want the most recent documents. So if it's 5 to 8 years old, I suppose it would depend if that person is still in school or not. If they're not in school anymore, I'm sure 5 to 8 years ago would be the most recent, and that's okay. If they are still in school, hopefully they have some more recent documentation as well, and we can gather that too.
Okay.
And with the MDT and the IEP, we usually do say that every MDT, because that way it shows a history of the need, and then the most recent IEP. And the most recent IEP, if they're still in school, should be within the last year. So that would complement an older MDT.
Okay, and a follow-up to the last question. The family was denied due to family income, but I think that Joyful mentioned that I have to wait until 19 to apply for a waiver.
No, if definitely apply for the waiver now. If you have a diagnosis, apply for the waiver now. There's no reason to wait. 19 would be when you reapply for Medicaid.
Okay. I'm working with a family that had applied last October for the DD waiver. However, this young man is now hospitalized due to seizures, which has caused loss of gross motor skills. Does he need to reapply, or can he just add the A and D to the previous application?
We would want to have them reapply. Send us a new application for the individual so that we can process it based on the new circumstances.
Okay. If we accept one type of waiver, for example, the A and D, and find it is not meeting the individual's needs, can one switch to a different waiver?
Yes, you can use a different waiver if that would better meet your needs, as long as you qualify for the level of care for that waiver. And I think it's important when we talk about using different waivers, just to clarify that we can only use one waiver at a time. So if you are on one waiver, we do have to use that one only. But if you choose to use a different one, you can switch to a different waiver if it better meets your needs and you qualify for the level of care.
Would you automatically be able to switch if you met that level of care, or do you have to wait for, like, if you're on the A and D and you say this isn't meeting it, can we just go to the CDD, or do you have to wait for that slot to open?
So for the DD waivers, you would have to have an offer there. And I think that this is really going to be very person-centered as well. So you'd want to work with that service coordinator to determine what the best need is, and then how to work within our teams to make sure that we're getting you to the waiver that's going to best meet your needs.
Okay. Is there currently, are you currently enrolling people into the comprehensive waiver?
So I know offers come from Bree's team, so she may have a little bit different information on this. I don't want to get into any discussion of the elimination of the wait list, because that is a much bigger conversation that we are still working on. I will say that we are definitely still making offers when somebody meets a priority one and has an immediate crisis. We are still working with the Division of Juvenile, not division, but the Department of Juvenile Justice. We are still working with the foster care system, and we are taking people into that comprehensive waiver when they are aging out of those systems at 19 years of age. If someone wanted to move out of an institutional setting, we would make them an offer. If someone moved into Nebraska and was stationed at Offutt, or met that first priority, we would make them an offer at this time.
Okay, what does nursing home level of care mean for a 17-year-old who lives with their family and is attending public school?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I had a small slide on this, but you would have to meet level of care in one of three ways. So this would be like one medical condition or treatment that's listed in our regulations, limitations in at least 6 activities of daily living, or limitations in at least 4 of activities of daily living with the other medical considerations. So there's some specific criteria around it. If you're not sure if the person's going to meet level of care, but you think they might need the assistance, the best thing you can do is apply, and my team can help work through the logistics of level of care through their assessment.
How does Medicaid in public schools complement waivers, or does it?
I'm sorry, I'm not sure. Maybe Joyful, you have an answer to that. I'm not sure I understand.
So I'm not sure how, well, so Medicaid provides the medical needs. So Medicaid will cover those prescriptions, if you have seizure medications, if you need specialized dental care, the specialists you see, neurologists, whatever. Medicaid covers those medical. The waiver services is going to cover things like a provider comes into your home and helps the person with some of those daily tasks, helps teach them things. So they're very different. When you have a waiver, because you do have to have Medicaid, you do get all the Medicaid services as well. One question I get a lot is like a hesitation of, I don't need Medicaid. I have, my child is on my insurance and I don't want this service. Medicaid does need to be applied for and accepted because your private insurance is not going to pay for our waiver services. However, if you want to maintain private insurance, Medicaid will just be a second payer. So they may pick up your co-pays. School systems are responsible, the education Department of Education is responsible for all of those day or vocational learning services until someone turns 21 years old and that school year ends. So we can't provide any like day or vocational type services until someone is 21 years old and that school system has ended. It is very possible to have waiver services while in school. The family support waiver, everybody on it is going to be receiving school services as well. We do have people on the comprehensive waiver that receive school services, and they really should complement each other. When you are receiving waiver services and enrolled in school, we do hope and expect for the service coordinator to come to IEP meetings. In fact, person-centered planning meetings and IEP meetings can be held together, so that the person just has to have one meeting, and those services can work together. The schools obviously know how people learn well, so we don't need to recreate that wheel. We can all work together to see what that student needs. So I don't know if that answers the question. I see there's a couple more. Assistive technology. Indeed, when we do have a student, we need to make sure that if they're asking a waiver to pay for something like assistive technology, we need to make sure that all of the resources have been tried as first.
Okay, how do families know if they should apply for a waiver and if they would qualify? At what point would you advise a family apply?
So I advise people apply as soon as they have a diagnosis. Schools really aren't saying that as often, possibly because they don't know. We do work a lot with schools and ESUs, but it's typically more the transition period where they really start inviting us to things. Any way we can get the word out there to schools, there is no reason that children in elementary school or middle school shouldn't be applying, if that makes sense. And Bree, you may have additional thoughts on that as the people who do the eligibility.
Yeah, I agree with Joyful. I think apply as soon as you know that you might need services, and then our team can help walk through, the process for application or what your needs might be. Or if you don't have waiver needs, we've even directed people to other resources that might be available to them too. So it's a good way to get connected with us and start getting the services you need.
And our division does also include the medically handicapped children's program and lifespan respite now. So hopefully there will be more workaround. So if somebody does need services or they don't quite need waiver services right now, but they do need a little bit of respite, hopefully we can help people get those services they need now better.
Okay, another question. Are there any in-office sessions where I could bring my paperwork laptop and complete these applications and have the availability for help while completing the forms?
Yeah, I saw that question too. Yes, if you can absolutely bring your information to any DHHS office, and we should be able to help you complete that. Another option might be if you want to call the main division phone number. We do have office specialists who answer the phone there, and they also can help take the application by phone too. something we've been working on with them so that they are able to assist in that way too. So if that is something that you want help with, definitely reach out. We want to help you with that.
I'll just do a little plug here for MMI and our Family Care Enhancement Project. Us as parents of children with disabilities, the PRCs, we can help you fill out those applications also. So you can contact DHHS, or you can schedule a meeting with one of our PRCs or the Munroe-Meyer care coordination team. Okay, another question. How do families request the assistance in obtaining the application materials? So in one of the slides, it said that the department can help gather that information. How does the family request that assistance?
So when they fill out the application, it includes a consent to release information. And you'll just fill out that consent to release information, mark whom you want us to contact. The application includes like who is the diagnosing doctor, what schools. So you're going to fill out whomever it is you want us to contact. And when we get that consent to release information, we will automatically reach out to them.
Okay, I know that's very helpful for families. That was all that for questions in the chat. If anybody has any other questions, we do have a few minutes here. Now's your chance. All right, I am silent. I'm hearing silence. So I think you covered it all. We are all experts in applying for waivers now, and we've got this. Thank you so much, Joyful and Brianne, for joining us this afternoon. We really appreciate it. I'm sure we probably will have follow-up questions for you, so we will be in touch. And thank you everyone for joining us. If you have any additional questions, you have my email address. And feel free to reach out if you need anything else, if we can help with anything.
And I did see a question, and someone asked if they would get the PDF or get a copy of the PowerPoint. And Jennifer, I can certainly send you a PDF of the PowerPoint if you want to share that with attendees.
That would be great. Yes, I can get that sent out then.
Well, thanks for having us, Jennifer. It's nice to meet everybody, and please do reach out if you have any questions at all. We want to be here to help.
Thank you so much.